Good, thank you. Thank you to all, and thank you for this invitation. And I am a big fan of Ostrom workshop, and I've been following you by YouTube and other means for a while. I want to congratulate all of you for that effort. So yeah, I am very honored and pleased to be here. Okay. So I will be talking about pretty much a work in progress that we are doing now in Bolivia, in the Altiplano, very close to La Paz city. So it is, we don't have yet results, but I'd like to share what we have been developing. And I guess I will try to end with some research questions or the lines, research lines that we are following. Okay, so yeah, so I will do a brief presentation of water context in terms of the ability, the quantity, and the changes in water ability in the Altiplano. Especially in the Cordillera Real, Cordillera de los Andes. I will then talk about the multi-purpose project from the government that is applied in one specific region. And in that region, we have a very strong traditional water management communities. So in this research, I will not talk about all that we have made in terms of data collecting, and we are still in the data collecting process, but we are doing mostly ethnographical kind of work. We have been working with communities, but mapping their the channels. We have been using also satellite imagery to depict land uses. And we also made some experimental games, especially to measure trust and reciprocity with the water associations. Of course, we do interviews all the time. So that's the data we are gathering now. Okay, so in the Andes, especially in the tropical Andes, water ability is changing dramatically. There is already a quite interesting amount of research that shows that there is a reduction of glaciers and then the water ability for the main cities, but also for the agricultures. This has been shown by the research since 2000. But now the research is showing that the reduction of glaciers in the Andes, in the tropical Andes, is even more stronger than thought before. And the two places where that is happening is in the Patagonia in the south and in the tropical Andes, where I put this sign here. Where is just where we are working on. And so around that, there is also changes in the rainfall patterns and an increased amount of drought in the region. So these changes have brought a very strong shortcuts on water for La Paz. In 2016, there had been a very strong crisis. So about 2 million people in La Paz and Alto, the two main cities, didn't have water for months. And so they had to reduce or to have only a couple of jerrycans per day per person. So this is a very strong problem still going on, and faced to that, well, around that, we also have to talk about the decentralization process. since 30 years ago, almost since 1994, because it introduces especially the recognition of community to manage their water. But especially in 2000, we had this water war that is globally famous because it stops the privatization movement around the water, and it put in the table the self-management water users and a new perspective on water management. So the perspective or the trend of water management in Bolivia since 2000 was the adoption of the integral water management policies that it has been around the world, promoted by Swiss and German corporations, but also Bank of Development, some of the bank development. So that's the second big condition and external factors of the case I want to talk about. And then, we also had to mention that in 2009, we had a new constitution promoted by the President Evo Morales, who this new constitution made the water ability a human right, and also establishes a new rural indigenous judicial systems, so at the same level of the normal law system. Okay, so since 2009, the water is a human right, and then the government has been spending a lot, or more than in the past, on water. So these two external context, the changes on water ability, especially for human consumption, and the new approaches of water has led the government to increase their investment, public investment on water, especially on irrigation on rural water systems. And that we can distinguish two kind of projects: the very small project at community level for a couple of families, and also the large infrastructures, which are dams and other like pipelines to bring water to the cities. That's especially true for the main three cities in Bolivia, so La Paz, El Alto, then also Cochabamba in the middle of the country, and Santa Cruz. So all those investments have been very important in the last 5 years, and that's what we are going to talk about now. So, but first of all, I would like to take a moment to explain a little bit the Aymara communities in the Altiplano. So the Aymara communities, normally the Altiplano is so as a very arid and hostile environment, but in reality, before the Spanish, the Altiplano was the home of about 15 million people who were developing a very rich agriculture, especially around the domestication of potatoes, like hundreds of varieties of potatoes, but also quinoa and other Andean cereals. So, like, it was not that difficult to live in the Altiplano, especially if you get this very well management of the land and the water. But at the arrival of the colonizations, the Spaniard didn't really destroy all the institutions over there. What they did at the beginning of the colonization was to just rely on traditional institutions, just with the new ruler. And so it was kind of preservation of the communities. Of course, there were fights and problems there, but not all the Spanish colonization was like the destruction of communities. Communities, the traditional communities, they managed to keep some of their land and their communal land till very into the 1825. Even after the independence in 1825, the traditional communities were still alive. It was really in 1817s, 1816s that the landlords in charge of the of the government grab or really erode the indigenous territories, and that give the space of the development for the landlords and haciendas who were in place till 1953, when we had our agrarian revolutions. After the 1953, peasant communities were reorganized around those same haciendas, those landlords' properties, and so the communities that we are dealing with now, they are in existence now, are from came from 1953, but they have this long tradition that I am describing now. And so those communities had organized in the Altiplano, are very well organized in terms of fighting the Spaniards in one time, but the Bolivian government then after. And they do have a very common management of their territories. They have a strong political organization, and they manage the territory, the land, the water, and the relationship with the others. So in many ways, these communities control, in a way, many aspects of the life of their members. And so the water is just about one of those aspects that are dealt by the communities. And so normally, all the communities in the Altiplano will have a water judge, and then, if needed, and depending on the size of the community, they will have one or two water mayors, or alcaldes de agua. And so, and then these persons will do all the work within the community. But also, these communities are organized on other larger organizations. So you have the community, and then what we call subcentral. So it's the sum of their various communities. And then the water is then managed at that second level too. And so we were going to try to show how this works for water. Okay, so that's the context of the implementation of the multipropósito project since 2000. Sorry, it's okay.
I'm sorry. Could everyone please mute their mics? Please mute. Thank you. Sorry, Jean-Paul.
So after this water crisis in 2016, the government developed this project, Multipropósito, who the main intention is to bring water to the nearby cities of La Paz and El Alto. So in this map here, we cannot really see the pipeline, but from the main lines up on the upper lakes, if you want, there is an important and big pipeline to bring water to La Paz, which is like 30 miles away from this point, so not that far away. And so the multipropósito financed by international donors are composed, have two components. One is that this pipeline to drinkable water to La Paz and the cities, and the other is the irrigation project for the communities. So it's about 45 communities here. So, and since this decentralization and given the more important role, like kind of recognition of the role of those communities in the managing the water, it is like they have the property really, but almost. And so the irrigation project here is more or less the result of a obligate negotiation by the government to take water to La Paz. And so for us, it's still unclear how all these negotiations had been done, but it is clear that at the end of the things, the communities or some communities have accepted the construction of this very important infrastructure on water, on irrigation infrastructure, and they accepted the division of the water in this percentage. 70% of the water will go to La Paz and Alto, and 30% will remain in place for the irrigation system. And so to manage that, following the new law in 2004, the government has to give the management of this infrastructure to the communities. And so 5 associations have been created. Not really. The green one had a more longer history. It is in place since 20 years or so ago. And the other ones, in the yellow, the red things, are much more newer. And so they are supposed to be in charge of the management of this system. But these systems overlaps directly on what is the traditional infrastructure for water in the region. So here we can see in blue the new infrastructure, the new construction for water, and in yellow our still in progress reconstruction of what is the traditional channels in place. So what the communities have been managing since we don't really know. So here we see a physical overlapping, but also there is an institutional overlapping, in the sense that I don't have really a map showing the territories of the whole communities, but they will more or less match these associations, but more or less, because some communities will pertain to one association, but will also pertain to another level of water governance, the subcentrales that I mentioned before, who don't really match the association territories. So there is kind of confusing layers of governance. we don't are really sure how the governance systems is being in place now. So we made a survey, and 153 water authorities in the region, in about all the communities. And we asking who is in charge of water management. And so that was an open question. And so we finally reduced the answers on these three main categories. There was almost 40% of people who were saying that the water management was done by traditional authorities, like alcaldes de agua, water judges, etc. 40% were saying that the new associations and new committees, water committees, were doing the water management. And 11% were given at the same time both kind of references. So, so there is not a clear picture here of who is in charge of the water. So we, in the aim of understanding how this new infrastructure and institutions around water and the old ones were trying to, they were going to mix them. And so we were, first of all, trying to understand what's the old thing in place. And so by doing community mapping, fieldwork, research, and in satellite imagining analysis, we try to figure out the whole system of traditional channels. And so here we don't have the division between communities, but around in this map, we should imagine there is about 45 communities in this space. So there must be there is a collective action across communities. And some of the old channels were doing a very interesting thing. They were bringing water from the watersheds that have all the year round water to the micro watershed that does not have water all the year. So for instance, this first point here. So it's collecting water from one of the most rich on water. I mean, the river that has more water all the year. And they were bringing water to other micro watersheds here and here and there. And so they follow a very slight decline in the landscapes. And so this pattern, we find these patterns in different places. And so the irrigation system, it's a combination between the natural characteristics, the rivers, and the man-made channels. And so that is very nice, but also we find that this across community interactions, they were not really working that well all the time. And we find strong problems here. I don't know if you see my cursors, and there. And so people there are telling us that they cannot really coordinate very well with other communities. So there is problems there. And so we made we made we tried to measure two aspects of collective action: trust and reciprocity, and by experimental games. This is a paper that's about to be published. And so, and we found that there is kind of low levels of trust, and the bigger problem is that there is even lower levels of reciprocity. And when we dig on the results, we cannot find that that's because the person who were answering these questions were thinking at level of the associations, so those ones. And so, and so there is already problems in combining the associations and the community's management of water. Okay, but then, okay, this is a very work in progress, and we still don't have all the web, all the canals web in place. But then we put together with these channels maps a map about bofedales. And so, and this is the more interesting aspect of the water, of traditional water management, is that most of the water, yeah, is devoted or is to crop irrigation. But I will say that most of the water is devoted to bofedales. Bofedales are, for me, working before on forest, I will say that bofedales are like the forest for the lowlands, because they really concentrate an interesting amount of biodiversity. They are carbon CO2 sinks, and they are also like water reservoirs. So they fulfill a lot of ecological services. And our results here shows that about 30% of permanent wetlands, those peatlands, are created by the traditional channels. And so the water management are in fact kind of the creation of another commons, the water, but the grasslands. So this phenomena, if you want, has been shown by biologists in other parts of the same cordillera, in the same mountain range. So it's not that uncommon, and it has been shown before. And being one of the main products of the traditional water management, we try to look at a little bit more in detail. So, sorry. So here, this picture came from around here. Yeah, in this place, in this red circle. So here, this picture really depicts what our interviews are describing about water management and what their traditional authorities were doing. And so you have this channel here, and then a couple of stones, and this grass, big grass here. And so what they were doing in their daily or current labor was open these other channels and closing others. And so in a very simple way, they were creating those wetlands that we are seeing here. We are still in working also the dynamics of the water, and as has been shown in other research in Peru, for example, those highland wetlands are also also the water sources of the more lowlands. So in more down in the mountains, and there is water ice of emergence of water from the soil. So those are linked, we think, with those water pitlands in the top of the mountains, if you want. So, so this is a very easy management with a lot of ecological benefits that the multi-purpose project of irrigations are not contemplating at all. The multi-purpose irrigation systems goes under the earth with pipelines without any kind of these spillovers, without any way of not rational or efficiency in the use of the water. All the water is devoted for irrigation in a very controlled manner, but very sophisticated manner too. So now we are thinking in the rest of the research. So multi-propósito project is only focused on irrigation without really taking on account the ecological benefits of the traditional management of water. And even more, what is promoted by the multi-propósito is like is more it's a paradigm of efficiency, rational uses of the water, which is completely the contrary spirit and practice of the communities. So the questions ahead of us are, okay, which will be the ecological effects of the new multi-propósito projects? How the communities will organize with the new organization proposed by the government. And so what we can learn by the mix that we are going to find here to inform the other projects in Bolivia with the same model. So that's our following questions. And with that, I would like to finish this presentation.